On a Saturday afternoon at the mall, I received a text from my husband. "I'm busy tonight. You'll have to eat dinner alone." I sighed softly and walked toward the parking lot. Just then, someone called my name. I turned and recognized her. A woman I had met years ago at an architecture conference. She hurried toward me, her face tense, and slipped a sealed envelope into my hand. She lowered her voice and said, "You need to see this right now. And then ask yourself how well you really know your husband." Minutes later, sitting in my car, I opened the envelope and froze. "Hello everyone. Welcome to our story. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. Please note, this is a fictional story with dramatized elements designed to enhance the viewing experience and deliver meaningful lessons. Any names or settings that coincide with those in the outside world are purely coincidental. But the message carries deep significance and value. The September sun hung low over North Austin, casting long shadows across the polished limestone walkways of the Domain. It was one of those perfect Saturday afternoons. 78 degrees, a whisper of breeze carrying the scent of jasmine from the planters outside Nordstrom. I shifted the weight of my shopping bag from one hand to the other, debating whether I had time to stop by Williams-Sonoma before heading home. Graham had texted earlier that morning something about needing to catch up on portfolio reviews, which meant I'd be eating dinner alone again. Nothing new. I was halfway to the parking garage when I heard it. Lillian Grant. I turned. A woman was walking toward me. Mid-30s. Dressed in tailored slacks and a cream blouse that screamed professional but approachable. Dark hair pulled into a low ponytail. There was something vaguely familiar about her face. The kind of recognition you get when you've met someone exactly once years ago at a conference where you shook 200 hands. "It's me. Deanna Cole." She smiled a little uncertain. "We met at that AIA Texas conference in Houston back in 2018. You gave a talk on sustainable residential design. I remember because you mentioned using reclaimed barnwood and I thought it was brilliant." I blinked. The memory surfaced slowly like something pulled from deep water. Houston. The Hilton Americas ballroom. A panel discussion I'd been terrified to participate in because I was the youngest architect on the stage. "Oh my God," I said, smiling despite myself. "Yes. I remember. You were sitting in the third row. Weren't you? You asked about cost efficiency." Her face lit up. "You actually remember that?" Well, it was a good question. I shifted the bag again. "So, you're in Austin now. Just moved here 3 months ago." She said. "I'm a forensic accountant. Freelance work mostly for law firms and private clients. Austin's booming for that kind of thing. What about you?" "Still designing beautiful houses, trying to." I laughed. "My firm's downtown. We mostly do high-end residential and some light commercial." "That's amazing." Deanna glanced at her watch, then back at me. "Hey, I know this is random, but do you have a few minutes? There's a Starbucks right over there. I'd love to catch up if you're not in a rush." I hesitated. I didn't know this woman. Not really. But there was something warm and genuine about her. And the truth was I had nowhere to be. Graham wouldn't be home until late again. "Sure," I said. "Why not?" We sat outside under one of those big green umbrellas. Iced coffees. Sweating onto the metal table between us. Deanna asked the usual questions. How long had I been in Austin? Was I married? Did I have kids? I told her the short version. Moved here in 2016 when Graham got transferred for work. Married 8 years now. No kids yet. Still trying. I added the phrase slipping out automatically. It was what I always said. It sounded hopeful without being desperate. Deanna nodded, her expression sympathetic. That must be hard. It is what it is. I took a sip of my coffee. eager to change the subject. What about you married kids? No. And no. She smiled. But there was something tight around the edges. Work keeps me busy. Plus, I've had some, let's call them trust issues. Bad relationship a few years back. I'm still kind of recovering from it. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned a lot. She paused, stirring her drink with the straw. Your husband. Graham. Right. What does he do? He runs an investment fund. Hayes Capital Advisors. It's small boutique. Mostly real estate development projects. He's been doing it for a few years now. Before that, he worked for a bigger firm in Dallas. Sounds like he's doing well. He is. I smiled. But even as I said it, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. Graham was doing well. He'd always been good at his job. Good at making people believe in him. Good at making me believe in him. We talked for another 20 minutes. Small talk. Mostly. Deanna was easy to talk to. The kind of person who listened more than she spoke. But as we stood to leave, she stopped. Her hand went to her purse and she pulled out a manila envelope. Lillian, she said quietly, there's something I need to give you and I don't know if I should. But if I were in your position, I'd want to know. I stared at the envelope. What is this? Just look at it when you get home or don't. That's up to you. She pressed it into my hands, then stepped back. My number's inside. Call me if you need to talk. Before I could respond, she was walking away, her ponytail swinging behind her. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a full 5 minutes before I opened it. Inside were 3 photographs printed on regular paper, slightly pixelated, like they'd been taken from a distance and zoomed in. The first, Graham sitting at a table at what looked like a restaurant. Across from him was a woman, brunette, late 20s, striking in a sharp, polished way. They were leaning toward each other, laughing. Her hand was on the table close to his. The second, the same woman. Graham's hand was on the small of her back. They were walking into a building. I recognized immediately the Four Seasons downtown Austin. The third, a close-up. The timestamp in the corner read September 7th, 2024. 8:43 p.m. 1 week ago. The night Graham told me he had a late dinner with a client. My hands were shaking. I set the photos down on the passenger seat, my breath coming short and shallow. I picked them up again, stared at the suit Graham was wearing, the charcoal grey one I'd had dry cleaned for him that morning, the watch on his wrist, the Tag Heuer I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary. A business card had fallen out of the envelope. Deanna Cole, forensic accountant. A phone number. Nothing else. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to laugh because surely this was some kind of mistake. Some misunderstanding. Maybe the woman was a client. Maybe it was innocent. But the way he was looking at her. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham: working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the message. 3 days ago. Those words would have meant everything. Now they felt like a script. He'd memorize lines he delivered on cue. I needed answers. But if I confronted him now, right now, tonight, he'd deny it. He'd have an explanation ready. He always did. I needed proof. I started the car, my hands still trembling, and pulled out of the parking garage. The photos sat on the seat beside me, face down, like something I couldn't bear to look at, but couldn't throw away. For 8 years, I'd trusted him. For 8 years, I'd believed every word. But now, for the first time, I wasn't sure I believed anything at all. I didn't sleep. Graham came home just after midnight. the garage door rattling open in that familiar way that usually made me feel safe. I heard him moving through the house, keys on the counter. Shoes kicked off in the hallway. The bathroom sink running. When he slid into bed beside me, I kept my eyes closed. My breathing slow and even. But I was wide awake. There was a scent clinging to him. Faint but unmistakable perfume. Floral, expensive. Not mine. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe. And all I could see were those photographs. His hand on her back. The way she leaned toward him. The timestamp. September 7th, 2024. The night he told me he had a client dinner. At 3 o'clock in the morning. I gave up. I slipped out of bed and pattered down the hall to the home office. A small room overlooking our backyard. The one Graham rarely used because he preferred working downtown. I closed the door, turned on the desk lamp, and opened my laptop. Deanna Cole. Forensic accountant. Austin. Her LinkedIn profile came up first. Educated. Credentialed. 15 years of experience in financial fraud investigations. Working with law firms and private clients. Before that, she'd been an analyst at a Big Four accounting firm in New York. Everything about her profile looked legitimate. I stared at the screen. My stomach churning. Why would a forensic accountant be following my husband? What kind of research was she doing? And why did she give me those photos? I thought back over the past 6 months. Graham had been different. Not dramatically. So nothing I could point to and say, this is when it started. But small things. More business trips. More late nights. Phone calls he took in the other room. A kind of distance I couldn't quite name. Like he was always half present, his mind somewhere else. I told myself it was work. He was building his firm. He was under pressure. But maybe I'd been lying to myself. When I heard the garage door open again at 9 the next morning, I was in the kitchen pretending to read the Sunday paper. Graham came in wearing golf clothes. A polo shirt, khakis. His Titleist cap. He kissed the top of my head, poured himself a cup of coffee, and grabbed a granola bar from the pantry. Teeing off at 10:00, he said, Johnson from the investment group should be back by 3. Sounds good. I kept my voice light. Have fun. He smiled. Squeezed my shoulder. And left. I waited until his car was out of the driveway. Then I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Deanna. Can we meet? I need to talk. Her response came in less than a minute. Coffee shop on South Lamar. 11:00 a.m. Come alone. The place was called Cosmic Coffee. A little Austin institution with mismatched furniture. Local art on the walls. And the kind of espresso that could wake the dead. Deanna was already there when I arrived. Sitting at a corner table near the back. Away from the Sunday brunch crowd. She looked up as I approached, her expression. Careful. Thanks for coming. I said. Sliding into the seat across from her. Of course. She folded her hands on the table. I wasn't sure you'd call. I almost didn't. I took a breath. How did you get those photos? She didn't hesitate. I work fraud cases. Financial crimes. Mostly embezzlement. Ponzi schemes. That kind of thing. Your husband's firm came up in some background research I was doing for a client. I recognized you from the conference we met at in Houston. When I started seeing him with this woman repeatedly in situations that didn't look professional, I thought, you deserve to know. Who is she? Deanna pulled out a tablet, swiped through a few screens, and turned it toward me. A LinkedIn profile. Natasha Mercer. 29 years old. Junior partner at Hayes Capital Advisors. My husband's firm. She's worked there for 2 years. Deanna said quietly. Started as an analyst. Got promoted last year. I stared at the photo. She was beautiful in a sharp, polished way. Dark hair. Intelligent eyes. The kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a boardroom or a cocktail party. The kind of woman Graham would find impressive. They work together. I said. My voice hollow. Maybe it's just professional. Deanna swiped to another screen. A timeline. July 2024. She said. San Antonio. A real estate conference. They stayed at the same hotel. I have records showing they checked in within 20 minutes of each other. Same floor. Another swipe. August 2024. 3 nights he worked late. Security footage from his building shows them leaving together. Same car. Another. September. The Four Seasons. Twice in 2 weeks. I felt like I was underwater. The words reaching me slowly distorted. Lillian. Deanna's voice was gentle. I'm sorry. But this isn't professional. I sat back. My hands trembling. Why are you helping me? You barely know me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said. Let's just say I've seen this kind of thing before. And I believe women deserve the full truth before they make decisions about their lives. There was something in her tone. Something personal. Something unspoken. But I didn't push. What do? I asked. Let me help you quietly. We'll figure out exactly what's going on before you confront him. Financial records. Communications. Everything. I hesitated. This felt surreal. I'd woken up yesterday morning in a marriage I thought was solid. Now I was sitting in a coffee shop with a stranger planning to investigate my own husband. Okay, I said finally, but I need to check something first. I drove home in a dayspace. My mind spinning. When I got back to the house, I went straight to the office and logged into our joint checking account. Everything looked normal. Mortgage. Utilities. Groceries. The usual. Then I clicked over to my trust fund account. The one I'd inherited from my grandmother when she passed away 5 years ago. $850. 000. I'd barely touched it. Graham had said it was smart to let it grow. That he'd manage the investments. The screen loaded. Access denied. Please contact your bank for assistance. I stared at the message. My heart pounding. I tried again. Same result. I grabbed my phone and dialed the bank's emergency line. This is Lillian Grant. I'm trying to access account number ending in 4739. But I'm getting an error message. One moment. Mrs. Hayes. A pause. Keys clicking. It looks like that account requires in-person verification due to recent activity. Can you come in Monday morning? What kind of activity? I'm not able to discuss that over the phone. But we can help you at the branch. I hung up my hands. Shaking. Why couldn't I access my own account? Graham managed our investments. He'd always been good with money, better than me. But that account was mine. Wasn't it? I looked down at Deanna's business card. Still sitting on the desk where I'd left it the night before. Whatever was happening. It was bigger than an affair. I didn't sleep Sunday night. Either. By the time Monday morning rolled around, I'd had 3 cups of coffee and a knot in my stomach that felt like it might never untangle. I dressed carefully, navy blazer, white blouse. The kind of outfit that made me look like I had my life together. Even when I didn't. Then I drove downtown to the Wells Fargo branch on Congress Avenue. My hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The building was all glass and steel. Polished and impersonal. I walked through the revolving door at 9 sharp and gave my name to the receptionist. She smiled. Made a quick call. And within 2 minutes, a woman appeared. 50s sharp grey suit. Kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Hayes. I'm Patricia Miller. Account manager. Thank you for coming in. Let's talk in my office. Her office was small but professional, framed photos of her family on the desk. A potted fern in the corner. The faint hum of the air conditioning. She gestured for me to sit. Then pulled up my account on her computer. So, she said carefully, your online access was frozen due to some unusual activity flags. Nothing to panic about. Sometimes it's a security measure when we notice patterns that seem out of the ordinary. She clicked a few keys. Let me pull up your trust fund account now. I leaned forward. My heart pounding. The screen loaded. Rows of transactions. Dates. Amounts. All withdrawals. Here's what we're seeing, Patricia said. Scrolling slowly. Over the past 9 months, there have been a series of transfers out of this account. They were authorized so they didn't trigger fraud alerts. But the frequency did flag our system for review. Authorized by who? I asked, my voice tight. She pointed to the screen. December 2023. $8. 500 investment opportunity. Hayes Portfolio Management. January 2024. $7. 200. Business Venture. HM Capital LLC. February 2024. $9. 800. Real estate investment. Hayes Properties. The list went on. March. April. May. All the way through September. Total $67. 500. I stared at the numbers. My vision blurring at the edges. I didn't authorize these. I said. Patricia's expression shifted, sympathy mixed with something else. Concern maybe. According to our records, these transfers were authorized under a power of attorney. You signed the document in 2018. What? I blinked. No. I mean. Yes. I signed something in 2018. Graham said it would make it easier to manage our investment accounts while I was focused on work. But it was limited. It was only supposed to allow him to move money between investment accounts, not withdraw it. Patricia hesitated. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a file. This is what we have on record. She slid a document across the desk. General power of attorney. I scanned the first page. Legal jargon. Authorizations. And then at the bottom of the second page. My signature. It looked like mine. The loops. The slant. But I didn't remember signing this. Wait. I flipped back to the first page and read more carefully. This says general power of attorney. That's not what I signed. I signed a limited PA. Patricia's face tightened. Mrs. Hayes. The document we have includes a notary seal. It's been on file for 6 years. She pointed to the bottom of the signature page. Notarized by Natasha Mercer. Commission number 87392. State of Texas. The air left my lungs. That's his colleague. I said quietly. The woman in the photos. Patricia closed the file. Her voice gentle. I think I should give you some privacy to process this. No. I straightened. I need copies. Every transaction. Every document. Everything. Of course. She paused. Do you want to file a fraud report? I hesitated. If I filed a report now, the bank would freeze the account. Graham would be notified. He'd know I was on to him. Not yet. I said. I need to understand the full picture first. I made it to my car before the shaking started. I sat in the driver's seat, the folder of bank statements in my lap, and stared at the numbers. $67. 500. Gone. Siphoned off in careful increments over 9 months. Not large enough to raise immediate alarms, but steady. Methodical. He'd been stealing from me the whole time. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham. Morning. Babe. Client meeting ran long. Grab lunch without me. I stared at the message. Casual. Normal. Like he hadn't just drained $67,000 from my account. Like he wasn't sleeping with his business partner. My hands were still shaking when I called Deanna. She picked up on the first ring. It's not just an affair, I said, my voice cracking. He stole from me. $67,000. Where are you? Wells Fargo. Downtown. Don't move. Don't call him. Don't do anything. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She hung up. I sat there clutching the folder. The weight of 8 years pressing down on me. I'd trusted him with everything. My body. My heart. My future. My money. And he'd been lying the entire time. A notification lit up my phone screen. A text from Graham's mother asking if we were still coming to dinner on Friday. I swiped it away. I didn't know who he was anymore. I wasn't sure I ever had. 10 minutes later, a silver Honda pulled into the spot next to mine. Deanna got out, walked over, and tapped on my window. I unlocked the door, and she slid into the passenger seat. "Show me," she said. I handed her the folder. She flipped through the pages, her expression hardening with each one. When she reached the power of attorney document, she stopped. "Natasha Mercer," she said quietly. "Notary public. Except I'd bet money she's not actually licensed." "How did he?" I stopped. He swapped the document. I signed a limited PA. He must have replaced the pages and used his mistress to notarize the fake version. Deanna looked up at me. "Lillian, before we go any further, you need to know something." I waited. "This probably isn't the first time he's done this," she said. "And you might not be his only victim." The words hung between us sharp and cold. "What do you mean?" She closed the folder and turned to face me fully. "I mean, Graham Hayes has a pattern. And if we're going to take him down, we need to find the others." Deanna's apartment was in East Austin, a neighborhood of converted bungalows and modest mid-rise buildings, tucked between coffee shops and taco trucks. It was small. 1 bedroom. Cramped kitchen. A living room barely big enough for a couch. And a coffee table. But what caught my attention the moment I stepped inside wasn't the size. It was the wall. One entire side of the living room was covered in a massive corkboard. Papers. Photographs. Timelines. Strings connecting one piece of evidence to another. It looked like something out of a crime show. Except this wasn't fiction. This was my life. "Sit down," Deanna said, gesturing to the couch. "But before I show you this, you need to promise me something. Listen to everything I have to say before you react." I nodded slowly, my throat dry. "Okay." She pulled a folder off the coffee table and handed it to me. Natasha Mercer, 29 years old. Junior partner at Hayes Capital since 2022. She paused. "But that's not the whole story." I opened the folder. The first document was a marriage certificate. Clark County, Nevada. June 14 th. 2012. Graham Michael Hayes and Natasha and Sullivan. I stared at the names. My brain struggling to process the words. He was married to her. Yes. Deanna reached over and flipped to the next page. A divorce decree. And divorced October 2015. I looked up. He told me I was his first. He said he'd never been married before. Technically, he wasn't lying. They divorced a year before he met you. But she pulled out her phone, swiped through a few screenshots, and turned the screen toward me. Instagram posts. Graham and Natasha at dinner. At a bar. At a beach. Somewhere warm and sunny. They never really separated. Deanna said quietly. The divorce was just paperwork. They've been partners this whole time. I felt like I was going to be sick. "Well," I whispered. "Why would they pretend to be divorced?" Because it's easier to run a con when people don't know you're connected. Deanna stood and walked over to the corkboard. She tapped a section labeled victims. I found 3 other women. Same pattern. She pointed to the first column. Victim 1. Early 2016. Denver, Colorado. Professional woman. Early 30s. Graham dated her for 8 months. Convinced her to invest in a business opportunity. Stole $90,000 and disappeared. Who is she? I asked. Deanna's jaw tightened. And for a moment, she looked away. I'll tell you later. But trust me. She's real and she has personal reasons for wanting justice. I noticed her hands were trembling slightly as she moved to the next column. But I didn't push. Something about the way she avoided my eyes told me this was more complicated than she was ready to admit. She moved to the next column. Victim 2. Jessica Moore. 2018. Phoenix, Arizona. Marketing director. 30 years old. Graham used the same playbook. Fake investment firm. Fake documents. $82,000 stolen. Another column. Victim 3. Rachel Torres. 2020. Houston, Texas. Doctor. 33 years old. He took $115,000 from her. She actually filed a police report. But by the time they started investigating, Graham had already moved to Austin. I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked closer to the board. There were dates, maps, photos of Graham with each of these women smiling, holding hands, looking like the perfect couple. I'm number 4, I said, my voice hollow. Yes. Every 2 years he moves to a new city, finds a woman, steals her money, and moves on with Natasha. That's what it looks like. I turned to face her. How did you find all of this? Deanna crossed her arms. I'm good at my job. And I had personal reasons to track men like Graham. There was something in her tone. Something she wasn't saying. But I didn't push. Not yet. Why me? I asked. What made him pick me? The profile is textbook. Deanna said. Successful. Independent. Financially stable. Early 30s. Probably talking about wanting to settle down. Start a family. I thought back to the architecture conference where I'd met him. I'd been 24. Fresh off a big project. Excited about the future. He'd been charming. Confident. Interested in everything I had to say. He told me he wanted to get married. Have kids. Build a life. It was all calculated. I said quietly. From the very beginning. Yes. I sank back onto the couch. My hands trembling. 8 years. I'd spent 8 years with a man who saw me as a mark. A target. Nothing more. Lillian, Deanna said. Sitting down beside me. This is beyond local police jurisdiction now. Interstate fraud. Multiple victims. We need to contact the FBI. The FBI? I looked at her. My chest tight. I need time to think. This is my husband. My life. I know. Her voice was gentle. But think about those other women. Think about whoever he's planning to target next. I closed my eyes. She was right. I knew she was right. But the thought of opening this up, of turning my marriage into a federal case, felt like stepping off a cliff. Let me sleep on it. I said. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Deanna nodded. Okay. But Lillian. Be careful tonight. Don't let him know you're on to him. I won't. I drove home in a daze. The city lights blurring past my window. When I pulled into the driveway, Graham's car was already there. Through the kitchen window, I could see him moving around, chopping vegetables. humming to himself. He looked so normal. So familiar. In a few minutes, I'd walk through that door. I'd smile at him. Ask about his day. And he'd lie to me. Just like he'd lied every single day for the past 8 years. The question was, how long could I keep pretending? By the time the sun came up Tuesday morning, I'd made my decision. I waited until Graham left for work, another early client meeting. Then pulled out my phone and dialed Deanna's number. She picked up on the first ring. Set up the FBI meeting. I said, I'll do it. There was a pause. Then, are you sure? Yes. I took a breath. I keep thinking about Rachel. Jessica. That first woman in Denver. If I stay silent, he'll just do this to someone else. Okay. Deanna said quietly. I'll make the call. Can you meet this afternoon? Yes. FBI Field Office 2:00. I'll text you the address. The FBI field office was a nondescript building on the north side of Austin. All concrete and tinted glass. I parked in the visitor lot Tuesday afternoon. Showed my ID at the security desk. And was escorted to a conference room on the 3rd floor. Deanna was already there. Sitting across from a man in his early 40s. Dark hair. Sharp suit. The kind of face that had seen too much and didn't look surprised by anything anymore. Mrs. Grant. He stood and extended his hand. Special Agent Michael Torres. Financial Crimes Unit. Thank you for coming in. I shook his hand and sat down. My palms were sweating. Ms. Cole briefed me on your situation, Torres said, opening a folder. But I need to hear it directly from you. Start from the beginning. So I told him the photos Deanna gave me at the domain. The missing $67,500 from my trust fund. The forged power of attorney notarized by Natasha Mercer. The pattern across cities. Denver. Phoenix. Houston. Austin. The marriage to Natasha. The fake divorce. The Instagram posts proving they'd never really separated. Torres listened. Taking notes. His expression unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Miss Cole mentioned she's been providing us with information about your husband's firm for about 18 months now. Is that right? Deanna. I turned to her. 18 months you've been investigating him that long? Diana's jaw tightened. I'll explain later. Right now. Agent Torres needs the facts. Torres flipped through his folder. Mrs. Grant. We've had an open investigation into Hayes Capital Advisors since mid-2023. 3 clients filed complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission alleging missing returns. Each time your husband settled privately and they withdrew their complaints. We suspected coercion but couldn't prove it. He slid a document across the table. Your case combined with the multi-state victim pattern M. Cole compiled gives us probable cause for a federal search warrant. I stared at the paper. You're going to raid his office. Thursday morning. 9:00 a.m. Torres's voice was calm. Clinical. But between now and then, I need you to act completely normal around him. Can you do that? I thought about going home. Making dinner. Sleeping next to him. Pretending everything was fine. Yes. I said I can do that. Wednesday was the hardest day of my life. I went to work. Sat through meetings. Answered emails. And when I came home that evening, Graham was already there cooking pasta. A glass of wine in his hand. Hey. Babe, he smiled. How was your day? Fine. I set my purse down. Forcing my voice to sound light. Busy. He walked over and kissed me. You seem distant. Everything okay? Just a stressful project deadline at the office. Don't overwork yourself. He handed me a glass of wine. I love you. I smiled. I love you. Too. The words tasted like ash. That night, Graham initiated sex. I went through the motions numb, detached my mind somewhere else entirely. Afterward, he fell asleep almost immediately, his arm draped across my waist. I lay there staring at the ceiling, his breath steady. And even beside me. Who is this person lying next to me? Thursday morning arrived grey and cold. Graham left for the office at 8:30. Same as always. Kissing my forehead on his way out. I waited 10 minutes. Then texted Torres. He's there. At exactly 9:00. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Grant. It's Torres. The warrant is being executed now. Your husband may try to call you. Stay calm. Act surprised. Okay. I sat on the couch. My hands shaking. Watching the clock. 9:15. 9:20. 9:25. At 9:30. My phone rang again. Graham. I took a breath and answered. Lillian. His voice was loud. Frantic. Nothing like the calm confidence he usually carried. The FBI just raided my office. They took everything: computers, files, my phone. There are agents everywhere. What? I made my voice rise. Shocked. Why? What's happening? I don't know. Some dispute with a former client. Thompson. From the investment group. They're blowing it way out of proportion. My lawyer's on his way. This is insane. Are you okay? I'm fine. Just don't worry. This is a misunderstanding. It'll be cleared up in a few days. Okay. I said quietly. Come home when you can. He hung up. I set the phone down. My hands trembling. It was done. Graham came home that evening furious, pacing the living room like a caged animal. His tie was loosened. His hair disheveled. His face red with barely controlled rage. They humiliated me in front of my entire staff, he said. His voice tight. Walked in with a dozen agents like I'm some kind of criminal. Put everything in boxes. Made everyone stand outside while they searched. What exactly are they investigating? I asked, keeping my tone careful. Concerned. A former client claims I mismanaged his account. It's complete the guy's just bitter about market losses. He knew the risks when he invested. I watched him lie so easily. His face smooth and confident even in anger. And I felt something cold settle in my chest. I hope it gets resolved quickly. I said. It will. He ran a hand through his hair. My lawyer says they have nothing solid. This will blow over in a week. Maybe 2. He pulled me into a hug. His arms tight around me. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. I closed my eyes. It's okay. But it wasn't. Later that night, after Graham had finally fallen asleep, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from a blocked number. Forensic analysis underway. Preliminary findings. Your husband's firm is operating a Ponzi scheme. Approximately 40+ victims. Meeting tomorrow. 9:00 a.m. My office. Come alone. Tell no one. Torres. I read the message 3 times. My heart pounding. 40 victims. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't even just about the 4 women Deanna had found. Graham had been running a Ponzi scheme for years. I deleted the text, set my phone back on the nightstand, and lay down beside the man I'd married 8 years ago. The man I didn't know at all. I arrived at the FBI office at 9:00. Friday morning. My hand still shaking from the night before. I'd barely slept after reading Torres's text about the Ponzi scheme. About the 40 victims. About the magnitude of Graham's crimes. Stretching far beyond what I'd imagined. Torres met me in the same conference room as before. Deanna. Already seated at the table. Her face was pale. Her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. "Mrs. Grant," Torres said, gesturing for me to sit. "Our forensic team found something in the files we seized from your husband's office Thursday morning. I need to show you." He slid a manila folder across the table. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was a medical record. Billing statement. Procedure notes. The paper felt heavy. Official damning. Phoenix Men's Health Clinic. May 17, 2013. Vasectomy procedure. Patient Graham Michael Hayes. D.O. redacted. Total cost $850. Payment visa ending in 4729. I stared at the page. The words blurring together as my vision tunneled. "Does your husband have any chronic health conditions you're aware of?" Torres asked. His voice. Gentle but clinical. "No." My voice sounded far away. Like someone else was speaking. "He's healthy. He's always been healthy." "Why?" "This is a payment record from a men's health clinic in Phoenix. Vasectomy procedure performed in May 2013. The patient name, date of birth, and social security number all match your husband. The billing address matches an apartment he rented in Phoenix that year." I looked up at him. My chest tight. "That's not possible. We've been trying to have a baby for years since 2018. He wouldn't. He couldn't." Deanna's voice was quiet breaking. "Lillian. I found this when I was tracing his financial history in Phoenix. The credit card transaction. The medical records. I'm so sorry. There has to be a mistake," I said. My voice rising. "Maybe it's a different Graham Hayes. Maybe someone stole his identity." Torres shook his head slowly. "The DOS and billing address all match. We verified it with the clinic. This is your husband. He had the procedure 3 years before he met you." I don't remember much of the next few minutes. Torres kept talking something about financial records. Patterns of deception. Corroborating evidence. But all I could hear was the roaring in my ears like I was underwater drowning. Graham had a vasectomy in 2013. 3 years before we met at that architecture conference in Houston. 3 years before he told me he wanted to build a life with me. Start a family. Grow old together. My mind scrolled back through 8 years of memories. Each one now sharp and painful in a way it hadn't been before. Each one a fresh betrayal. Year 2. 2018. I'd suggested we see a fertility specialist. We'd been trying for over a year. Tracking ovulation timing. Everything perfectly. And nothing was happening. Graham had kissed my forehead and said, "Let's give it more time. Babe. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Stress can affect fertility." I'd nodded. I'd believed him. I thought he was being patient. Supportive. Year 4. 2020. I'd pushed harder. I wanted tests. Answers. I was tired of hoping every month and being disappointed. Graham had come home one evening with a printout, a lab report. Semen analysis. He'd said his face apologetic. Low sperm count. The doctor said it's stress-related. Nothing serious. We just need to keep trying naturally. I'd believed him. I'd reassured him. Told him it was okay. We'd keep trying. No pressure. No judgment. I'd carried the guilt that maybe my body was the problem. Year 6. 2022. I'd brought up IVF. In vitro fertilization. We could afford it. We had options. My friends were having success with it. Graham had frowned. "IVF is expensive and invasive, Lyle. Let's just keep trying naturally. We're not that old yet. There's still time." I'd backed down. I trusted his judgment. Year 8. 2024. I turned 32 in June. My doctor had gently reminded me that fertility declined after 35. If we wanted children, we should act soon. I'd brought it up to Graham over dinner one night. Maybe we should see a specialist just to make sure everything's okay. To rule things out. He'd smiled. Reached across the table. Squeezed my hand. Soon. I promise after this big project at work settles down. I want to be able to focus on our family without the stress. Always soon. Always later. Always an excuse. And I'd believed every word. Mrs. Grant. I blinked. Torres was watching me. His expression careful. Professional. But not unkind. The lab report. I said slowly. My throat tight. He showed me test results 4 years ago. Proof that he'd been checked. Proof that his sperm count was low. Deanna leaned forward. Do you still have that report? I keep files. Medical records. Everything organized. My voice was mechanical. It's at home in the filing cabinet. Torres nodded. Can you retrieve it today? We'll have our document examiner analyze it. I suspect it's a forgery. But we need to confirm. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was back at the house in Zilker alone. Graham had texted that he was meeting with his lawyer again. That he'd be home late. I didn't respond. I went to the home office. The room that overlooked our backyard. The room where Graham claimed to work from home but rarely did. And pulled open the filing cabinet. Medical records. Insurance. Taxes. Everything organized. Labeled. Color-coded. The way I liked it. The way I'd always kept things. I found the yellow folder labeled Medical Graham. Inside was the report. Phoenix Fertility Center semen analysis. Graham Hayes. Sperm count 40 million per milliliter low. Normal range 40 to 300 million per milliliter. Dr. Michael Stevens. MD date. March 15 th. 2020. I stared at it. The letter head. The clinical language. The doctor's signature at the bottom. Neat professional looping. Then I pulled out my phone and Googled Phoenix Fertility Center. No results. I tried again. Phoenix Fertility Center. Arizona. Nothing. I tried the phone number printed on the letterhead. The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again. I drove back to the FBI office with the report sealed in a plastic sleeve. My hands numb on the steering wheel. My mind blank. Torres met me at the door and took me directly to the forensic lab. A sterile white room on the second floor filled with computers. Microscopes. And machines I didn't recognize. A woman in her 50s with short grey hair and a lab coat took the document from me. Scanned it. And ran it through what looked like a specialized printer with infrared sensors. I sat in a plastic chair and waited. 30 minutes later. She looked up from her computer screen. This is a forgery. She said matter-of-factly. The template was downloaded from the internet. Probably from a medical document sample site. It was filled in using a home computer and printed on a standard inkjet printer. Not the kind used in medical facilities. She pointed to the screen where the document was magnified. See here. The doctor's signature is a scanned image. Not an original. It's been copied and pasted and the letterhead. She pulled up a database. Phoenix Fertility Center doesn't exist. Never has. There's no record of it with the Arizona Medical Board. No business license. No address. Torres turned to me. Your husband fabricated this document to convince you he'd been tested. To keep you trying. To keep you hopeful. I sat down in the nearest chair. My legs giving out. Back in the conference room. Deanna handed me a bottle of water. Breathe, she said quietly. Just breathe. I couldn't. 8 years. I whispered. 8 years I thought I was trying. 8 years I blamed myself for not getting pregnant. I thought it was my body. My age. My stress. My voice cracked. He had a vasectomy before he even met me. He never intended to have children with me. He lied about it from the very beginning. Deanna's hand was on my shoulder. Warm and steady. I know. I'm so sorry. Why? I looked up at Torres. My vision blurred with tears. Why would he do this? Why marry me at all if he didn't want a family? Torres's expression was grim. Because children complicate things. Mrs. Grant. Child support. Custody battles. Legal paper trails. DNA evidence. Men like your husband don't want complications. They want clean exits. Clean exits. Like I was a business transaction. A temporary investment. Something to be acquired. Used. And liquidated when it was no longer profitable. I thought about all the times I'd cried in the bathroom after another negative pregnancy test. The times I'd blame my body. My age. My stress levels. The guilt I'd carried for years. Thinking I was the problem. Thinking I was failing him. Failing us. And all along it had been a lie. Every word. Every promise. Every reassurance. A lie. Torres walked me out to my car as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, beautiful in a way that felt wrong, incongruous with the horror of what I just learned. Mrs. Grant, he said quietly, there's one more thing we need to discuss. But I wanted you to process this first. I looked up at him. Exhausted. Hollowed out. What else could there possibly be? He hesitated. It's about Deanna and the real reason she started investigating your husband. I couldn't go home. The thought of walking through that door. Seeing Graham's face. Pretending everything was fine. I couldn't do it. Not tonight. I sat in my car in the FBI parking lot for 10 minutes staring at my phone. Then I typed out a message. Staying at Rebecca's tonight. Girl stuff. Need some space. Graham's reply came within seconds. Okay, babe. Feel better. Love you. I stared at the red heart emoji. Once that would have made me smile. Now it felt like another lie in a lifetime of lies. I started the car and drove east. Deanna opened the door before I could knock. I thought you might come here. She said quietly. I stepped inside. The investigation wall was still there. Photos. Timelines. Strings connecting one piece of evidence to another. It looked different now. Darker. More real. I sank onto the couch. My legs giving out. I don't know who I am anymore. I said. My voice sounded hollow. My entire adult life. It was all a lie. Deanna disappeared into the kitchen. Came back with 2 mugs of tea. She sat down across from me. Her expression careful. I know how you feel. Do you? I looked at her. Agent Torres said. There's something you need to tell me. She set her mug down her hands. Trembling slightly. I've been trying to find the right time. But there's never a right time for this. After everything today. Just tell me. She took a breath. You remember I said I've been investigating Graham for 18 months? Yes. That wasn't entirely true. I've been investigating him for almost 8 years. I blinked. 8 years. That's how long I've been married. I know. Something cold settled in my chest. How do you know exactly how long I've been married? Because I started tracking Graham in 2016. Right after he did to me what he's been doing to you. The room tilted. What do you mean did to you? Deanna walked to the window. Her back to me. Lillian. I haven't been completely honest with you. We didn't just meet at that architecture conference 6 years ago. I mean, we did meet briefly. But I already knew who you were before that. I stood up. What are you talking about? Sit down. Please. Let me explain everything. I didn't sit. I couldn't. Deanna turned to face me. In 2016. I was living in Denver. I was 25. Fresh out of grad school. Just starting my career as a forensic accountant. She paused. I met Graham Hayes at a professional networking event. He was charming. Successful. Everything I thought I wanted. We dated for 8 months. He proposed. I said yes. He did the same thing to you. I whispered. Yes. And then he stole $90,000 from my inheritance and disappeared. I couldn't let it go. Deanna continued, her voice steady now. I used my forensic skills to track him. I found the pattern. Phoenix in 2018. Houston in 2020. And then Austin. She looked at me directly. I spent 6 years building a file: bank records, victim interviews, corporate filings, travel patterns. But I couldn't go to the FBI until I had proof of interstate fraud with multiple victims. One woman's story isn't enough. They'd call it a civil dispute. But 4 women across 4 states with the same MO. That's a federal case. I finally had enough evidence in 2023. That's when I approached Agent Torres. She looked at me. When I discovered he'd married you, I wanted to warn you. But I didn't have proof yet. So, I waited. Watched. Gathered evidence. The chance meeting at the Domain. I said slowly. That wasn't chance. No. I engineered it. I felt like I was going to be sick. You used me. I was just bait to you at first. Yes. Deanna's voice cracked. But then I got to know you and I realized you were exactly like I used to be. Trusting in love. About to lose everything. And I couldn't let that happen again. So you lied to me. My voice rose. Everyone in my life has been lying to me. Deanna's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'm sorry. But Lillian. Everything I found. The affair. The money. The vasectomy. It's all real. I manipulated how I got the information. But the information itself is the truth. And there's more. I stood up. Grabbed my purse. I can't do this right now. I can't trust anyone. I walked toward the door. Lillian. Wait. Deanna's voice stopped me. Tomorrow. Agent Torres wants both of us there. They've found more than you and I put together. I didn't turn around. How much more could there possibly be? I don't know. She said quietly. But whatever it is, it's big enough that Torres called me 3 times today. He said. We need to see it before Graham's lawyer gets wind of it. I stood there. My hand on the doorknob. What time? 9:00 a.m. I nodded once and left. I ended up at a budget motel off I-35. The kind of place with flickering neon signs and paper-thin walls. I paid cash. Checked into a room that smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. And lay on the bed fully clothed. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham. Hope Rebecca is taking good care of you. Miss you. I turned the phone face down and stared at the water-stained ceiling. 8 years with Graham. 8 years Deanna had been tracking him. Everyone had been lying. Everyone had been using me. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow Torres would tell me what else they'd found. Tomorrow I'd have to face Deanna again. The woman who'd befriended me under false pretenses. But who'd also been the only person trying to protect me. Tomorrow I'd learned just how deep this nightmare went. But tonight, alone in a motel room that wasn't mine, I finally let myself cry. I didn't sleep at the motel. I lay on top of the covers. Still fully dressed. Staring at the popcorn ceiling until the first grey light of dawn crept through the thin curtains. At 8:30, I drove back across town to the FBI office. My hands were steady on the wheel. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel much of anything. Just a cold, hollow exhaustion. Torres was waiting for me in the lobby. Mrs. Grant. Thank you for coming. You said there was more. There is. He gestured toward the elevator. Miss Cole is already upstairs. My stomach tightened. I wasn't ready to see her. I wasn't ready to forgive her or trust her or even look at her. But I followed Torres into the elevator anyway. Deanna was standing by the window in the same conference room we'd been in before. She turned when I walked in. Her face. Pale eyes red-rimmed like she hadn't slept either. Lillian. Don't. I held up a hand. Let's just hear what Agent Torres has to say. She nodded and stepped back. Torres closed the door and gestured for us to sit. He opened a thick folder and spread several documents across the table. Over the past 48 hours, our forensic team has analyzed every file we seized from Hayes Capital Advisors. What we found goes beyond the romantic fraud. Cole documented. Your husband has been running a Ponzi scheme. I blinked. A Ponzi scheme? Yes. Since 2021. He's defrauded 43 investors of approximately $4.70 million. The number didn't register at first. It was too big. Too abstract. Torres lit a spreadsheet toward me. Names. Dates. Amounts. Hayes Capital promised 12 to 18% annual returns on real estate development projects. But the projects didn't exist. Your husband used money from new investors to pay returns to earlier investors. Classic Ponzi mechanics. I scanned the list. Retirees. Small business owners. A teacher. A nurse. People who'd trusted Graham with their life savings. The scheme began to collapse in mid-2024. Torres continued. Withdrawals exceeded new deposits. That's when your husband started using money from the romantic scams to prop up the investment fund. Deanna leaned forward. The $90,000 he took from me. The money from Jessica Rachel Clare. He funneled it all into Hayes Capital. Yes. The romantic frauds weren't separate operations. They were emergency funding to keep the Ponzi alive. I felt sick. And Natasha? I asked co-conspirator. She managed client communications, fabricated quarterly reports, created fake property acquisition documents. Our tech team recovered emails between your husband and Miss Mercer dating back to 2021. They referenced shell companies' offshore accounts and strategies to delay client withdrawals. Torres pulled out a printed email from Graham Hayes to Natasha Mercer. Date September 8th, 2024. Subject Thompson Group. Thompson Group is getting nervous. Need $500,000 to keep them quiet. Can we tap Lillian's trust for the rest? POA should hold up. I read it twice. My name. My money. Discussed like a line item in a budget. How much more was he planning to take? I whispered. Torres looked at me with something like pity. Based on the email thread, he intended to drain the remaining balance of your trust fund. Approximately $783,000. The room tilted. Nearly $800,000. Everything my grandmother left me. Everything I'd been saving for a family. For a future gone. What happens now? Deanna asked. We're filing federal charges. Wire fraud securities. Fraud conspiracy to commit fraud. Forgery. Identity theft. If convicted, your husband faces 40+ years in federal prison. Ms. Mercer faces 30+. 40 years. He'd be 78 when he got out. If he got out. What about the victims? I asked. The investors. Can they get their money back? We're working with the SEC to freeze and seize his assets. Offshore accounts. Properties. Vehicles. Anything we recover will go into a restitution fund. But realistically, victims usually recover 30 to 50 cents on the dollar. Maybe less. I thought about the names on the spreadsheet. The teacher. The nurse. People who couldn't afford to lose 30%. Let alone 50. 43 people. I said quietly. Plus the 4 of us. 47 families. Yes. Deanna's voice was soft. Lillian. I'm sorry. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I looked at her. She looked small. Tired. Broken in a way I recognized because I felt the same. You manipulated me. I said. I know. You used me as bait. I know. Her voice cracked. And I'm sorry. But everything I found. The affair. The money. The vasectomy. The Ponzi. It's all real. I didn't lie about the evidence. I just lied about how I got it. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said. You spent 7 years tracking him. You gave up your engagement. Your MBA. Your life. Because you couldn't let him get away with it. Yes. You found Jessica. Rachel. Claire. You built the case that brought the FBI in. Yes. You saved me. I said. Maybe not the way I would have wanted. But you saved me. Deanna's eyes filled with tears. I stood up. Walked around the table. And pulled her into a hug. She clung to me. Shaking. I'm still angry. I whispered. But you're right. We're in this fight together. You became my sister. Torres cleared his throat. Mrs. Grant. There's one more thing we need to discuss. I pulled away from Deanna and wiped my eyes. What? We need to trap him. Get a confession on tape. Without it, his lawyer will argue the Ponzi was a legitimate business that failed. We need him to admit intent. How Torres pulled a small black box from his desk drawer and opened it. Inside was a delicate silver pendant on a thin chain. This is a recording device. You invite your husband to dinner somewhere public intimate. You wear this. You get him talking about the money, the power of attorney, the Ponzi. We'll have agents nearby. Once we have the confession, we move in. I stared at the pendant. You want me to wear a wire? Yes. And have dinner with him like nothing's wrong? Yes. I looked at Deanna. She nodded. I'll help you prepare. We'll script questions. Practice responses. You won't be alone in this. I turned back to Torres when as soon as possible. Before his lawyer figures out how much evidence we have. Ideally. Within the next week. I picked up the pendant. It was heavier than it looked. Okay. I said. I'll do it. The drive home felt like driving to my own execution. I sat at a red light on South Lamar, my hands gripping the steering wheel, and tried to remember how to breathe. In my purse, the recording pendant sat in its black box. A small weight that felt like it weighed 000 pounds. In 6 days. I would wear it. In 6 days. I would sit across from Graham at dinner and record his confession. But first, I had to go home. I had to look him in the eye. I had to pretend that nothing had changed. The light turned green. I drove. When I pulled into the driveway, Graham's car was already there. Through the kitchen window, I could see him moving around. Probably making coffee. Maybe checking his phone. He looked so normal. So ordinary. Like a man whose biggest worry was whether to order takeout or cook dinner. Not like a man who'd stolen $5 million. Not like a man who'd destroyed 47 lives. I sat in the car for a full minute. My engine off, my heart pounding. My phone buzzed. A text from Deanna. You can do this. Just breathe. Act tired. Act worried. Let him reassure you. I typed back. Okay. Then I opened the door and went inside. Graham was in the home office, hunched over his laptop, his face tight with concentration. When he heard me come in, he looked up and his expression shifted instantly. Relief. Concern. Something that might have been love if I didn't know better. Lillian. He stood across the room. Pulled me into a hug. Where have you been? I've been worried sick. I must have called you 10 times. I let him hold me. Even though every instinct screamed to pull away. He smelled like his cologne. The same one he'd worn on our first date. The same one I used to find comforting. Now it made me nauseous. I stayed at Rebecca's. I said. My voice muffled against his shoulder. I just needed some space. The FBI thing scared me. He pulled back his hands on my shoulders. Searching my face. I know. I'm sorry you had to go through that. But it's going to be okay. My lawyer met with them yesterday. They have nothing. Are you sure? I asked. Letting my voice tremble slightly. It seemed so serious. All those agents. It's one former client. Graham said, his tone shifting into the smooth, confident register I'd heard him use with investors. Guy named Thompson. Lost money in the market last year and blamed me. Filed a bogus complaint with the SEC. The feds are required to investigate. But it's all procedural. My lawyer says the case will be dropped within 2 weeks. Thompson. The name from the email Torres had shown me. Thompson Group needs $500,000 to keep them quiet. I forced myself to nod. That's a relief. Exactly. He smiled. Squeezed my shoulders. I didn't want you to worry. That's why I didn't tell you the details. But it's handled. I promise. I looked into his eyes. They were steady. Clear. Convincing. 8 years ago. I would have believed him without question. Even now. If I hadn't seen the evidence myself. I might have. He was that good. Okay. I said softly. I trust you. The words felt like swallowing glass. Graham insisted on cooking dinner that night. Pasta carbonara, garlic bread. A bottle of Chianti he'd been saving. He moved through the kitchen with the ease of someone who didn't have a care in the world, humming along to the jazz playlist he always put on when he cooked. I sat at the counter and watched him. Watched the way he chopped garlic with practiced precision. Watched the way he tasted the sauce. Adjusted the seasoning. Poured wine into the pan with a flourish. He looked up and caught me staring. What? Nothing. I said. Just thinking about how lucky I am. His face softened. I'm the lucky one. Babe. He crossed to my side of the counter. Leaned down. And kissed me. I kissed him back. It was mechanical, empty. But he didn't seem to notice. You've been so patient with me, he said, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. With the stress at work. The long hours. I know I haven't been the best husband lately. You've never been a husband. I thought. You've been a con artist playing a role. It's okay. I said aloud. I know work is hard right now. Well. I want to make it up to you. He straightened. Returned to the stove. Stirred the pasta. Let's go out this weekend. Just the two of us. Somewhere nice. My pulse quickened. What do you mean dinner? Saturday night. He glanced over his shoulder. Grinning. How about Uchi? You love that place. We haven't been in months. I stared at him. My mind spinning. He was handing it to me. The perfect setup. The exact location. The exact scenario the FBI needed. Uchi. I repeated. Keeping my voice light. Surprised. That sounds amazing. Good. I'll make a reservation for 7:30. We'll get dressed up. Drink too much sake. Eat way too much sushi. He plated the pasta. Brought it over. Set it in front of me with a flourish. It'll be like old times. There were no old times. There had never been old times. Everything had been a lie from the beginning. But I smiled. I can't wait. After dinner, Graham settled onto the couch to watch a Spurs game. I told him I needed to catch up on emails. And retreated to the bedroom. I locked the door. Sat on the edge of the bed. And pulled out my phone. I texted Deanna. He suggested dinner. Saturday. 7:30 p.m. He brought it up on his own. Her response was immediate. Perfect. Torres is going to be thrilled. That gives us 6 days to prepare you. How are you holding up? I stared at the question. I don't know. It's harder than I thought being here watching him lie. Deanna. I know. But you're doing amazing. Just 6 more days. Then it's over. I wanted to believe her. But 6 days felt like an eternity. I deleted the thread. Washed my face. And went back to the living room. Graham was still on the couch. Beer in hand. Eyes on the screen. Who's winning? I asked. Sitting beside him. We are by 12. He draped an arm around my shoulders. Pulled me close. This is nice. Just us. No stress. I leaned into him because I had to, because that's what the old Lillian would have done. But inside, I was screaming. That night, I lay awake long after Graham fell asleep. His arm was heavy across my waist. His breathing deep and even. The clock on the nightstand glowed red in the darkness. 2:47 a.m. In 6 days. I would sit across from this man at Acquaintance. In 6 days. I would wear a wire hidden in a pendant and ask him to tell me the truth. In 6 days. I would watch FBI agents walk into that restaurant and arrest him. But until then, I had to lie here. I had to wake up beside him. I had to smile when he smiled. Laugh when he laughed. Pretend that I didn't know he was a predator who'd spent 8 years playing me for a fool. 6 days. 144 hours. I could survive 144 hours. I had survived worse. I closed my eyes and made myself a promise when this was over. When Graham was in handcuffs and the truth was finally out. I would never let anyone make me feel this small again. 6 days until I took my life back. 6 days until I became someone new. I could do this. I had to. Sunday morning. I drove back to the FBI office alone. Graham thought I was meeting a college friend for brunch. Another lie. Another performance. I was getting good at them. Torres met me in the lobby at 9 sharp. Mrs. Grant. Ready to get started. I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. The training room was small and windowless with a table, 2 chairs, and a wall of technical equipment I didn't recognize. A woman in her 30s with short dark hair stood beside the table holding what looked like a jewelry box. This is Special Agent Lisa Morgan, Torres said. She's our tech specialist. She'll walk you through the equipment. Agent Lisa smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Grant. This is the recording device you'll be wearing Saturday night. She opened the box. Inside was a silver pendant on a delicate chain. Simple. Elegant. The kind of thing I might wear to a nice dinner. Except it wasn't jewelry. It was evidence. It's voice activated. Lisa said. Lifting it carefully. Records up to 8 hours. Crystal clear audio. The microphone is here. She pointed to a tiny hole in the pendant's design. And the battery indicator is this small LED. But it's only visible if you're looking for it. She handed it to me. It was heavier than it looked. Put it on. Torres said. Get used to how it feels. I fastened the chain around my neck. The pendant rested just below my collarbone. Cool against my skin. Now. Torres said. Pulling out a chair. Let's talk about what you're going to say. For the next 2 hours. Torres drilled me. He sat across the table. Firing questions. Teaching me how to steer the conversation without sounding suspicious. Start with concern, he said. You're worried about money. You saw some withdrawals you don't remember authorizing. Keep it emotional. Not accusatory. I nodded. Taking notes when he deflects and he will push gently. Say things like, but I don't understand. Or can you help me remember? Make him feel like he's in control. Like he's reassuring you. What if he won't talk? I asked. What if he just shuts down? Torres leaned forward. Then you pivot. Talk about Natasha. About the affair. Men like your husband have egos. They can't resist explaining themselves when they think they've outsmarted you. What exactly do you need him to say? 3 things. Torres held up 3 fingers. 1. I took the money. 2. I forged the power of attorney. 3. The Ponzi scheme was intentional. Even if he doesn't use those exact words. We need him to admit intent. That's what makes it criminal. Not just a business failure. I wrote it down my hands. Shaking. I took the money. I forged the POA. The Ponzi was intentional. You can do this. Torres said. His voice softer. You've been living with him acting normal for days now. This is just one more performance. Except this time. We're recording. Monday afternoon. I met Deanna at her apartment. She'd set up her living room like a stage, 2 chairs facing each other. A small table between them. Even a fake menu from Uchi. We're going to role-play. She said. I'll be Graham. You practice your questions. I don't know if I can do this. Yes. You can. She sat down. Folded her hands on the table. Come on. Sit. I sat. Deanna's expression shifted. Her posture. Straightened her face. Took on a confidence I recognized instantly. It was eerie how well she could mimic him. So. She said in a voice that wasn't quite hers. How's work been? Babe. I stared at her. Lillian, Deanna said. Dropping the act. You have to answer. Pretend I'm him. I swallowed. Work's fine. Busy. She smiled. Graham's smile. Good. I'm glad this FBI thing hasn't stressed you out too much. Actually. I said. My voice trembling. I wanted to ask you about something. What's that? I checked our trust fund account last week. There were some withdrawals. I don't remember. About $67,000. Deanna, as Graham frowned, leaned back. Oh, that. Those were investments. Babe. I told you about them. Did you? I don't remember signing anything. You signed the power of attorney back in 2018. Remember? I hesitated. Taurus had told me to push gently. But my instinct was to scream. Deanna broke character. Good. But when he says that, don't back down. Act confused. Not angry. Say. But I only signed a limited PAR. I interrupted. Not a general one. She nodded. Exactly. Keep that energy. Make him explain. Make him lie. We practiced for 3 hours. By the end, I was exhausted and I'd broken down crying twice. Once when Deanna as Graham called me naive. Once when she said, "You've always been bad with money. Lyle." That's why I handle it. Because those were things the real Graham had said. Things I'd believed. You're going to be amazing. Diana said. Pulling me into a hug after the last run through. Saturday night. You're going to walk into that restaurant and you're going to take him down and I'll be right outside the whole time. Tuesday morning. I had an emergency session with my therapist. Dr. Rebecca Lawson. I'd been seeing her on and off for years. Mostly for work stress. Occasionally for fertility grief. But I'd never told her the whole truth about Graham until now. I sat in her office. A small, warm room with soft lighting. And a couch I'd cried on more times than I could count and told her everything. The affair. The money. The vasectomy. The Ponzi scheme. The wire I'd be wearing in 4 days. Dr. Lawson listened, her expression calm and steady the way it always was. When I finished, she said, "Lillian, do you feel like you're betraying him?" "Yes." I whispered. Even though I know I shouldn't. You're not betraying him. He betrayed you for 8 years. She leaned forward. What you're doing Saturday night isn't revenge. It's justice. Not just for you. But for every person he's hurt. What if I can't do it? What if he looks at me and sees through me? You've been acting for weeks. Dr. Lawson said gently. You've been waking up next to him. Cooking dinner with him. Pretending everything is normal. You're stronger than you think. And you're not doing this alone. I nodded. But I didn't believe her. Wednesday night. Graham came home from work whistling. He kissed my forehead. Opened a bottle of wine. And mentioned casually like it was no big deal that he'd confirmed our reservation at Uchi. Saturday 7:30. Just us. He grinned. I can't wait. Me neither. I said. Smiling back. And I meant it because in 3 days, this nightmare would finally end. That night, after Graham fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. A text from Deanna. You've got this. We're all with you. I typed back 3 more days. 3 more days. She replied. And then you're free. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. 3 days until I looked Graham in the eye and asked him why he'd destroyed me. 3 days to prepare for the performance of my life. I could do this. I had to. Thursday morning. I called in sick to work. I couldn't sit in meetings and pretend to care about blueprints and building codes when in 2 days I'd be sitting across from my husband wearing a wire. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I couldn't drink, and a list of phone numbers Deanna had given me. 3 women. 3 cities. 3 lives Graham Hayes had destroyed before mine. I picked up my phone and dialed the first number. Rachel Torres answered on the second ring. Hello. Hi. My name is Lillian Grant. Deanna Cole gave me your number. I don't know how to start this conversation. There was a pause. Then you're married to him. Aren't you? To Graham? Yes. My voice cracked. How did you know? Deanna told me there was another one. I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry. Too. For what he did to you. Rachel's voice was steady, clinical. The voice of someone who'd spent years learning how to talk about trauma without drowning in it. Houston. 2020. We dated for 8 months. He proposed on my birthday. 3 months later. He'd taken $115,000 from my savings and disappeared. I filed a police report. They said it was a civil matter. By the time I got a lawyer involved, he was gone. He took $67,000 from me. I said quietly. And 8 years of my life. Then we're going to make him pay. Rachel's voice hardened. Deanna said you're wearing a wire Saturday night that the FBI is moving in. Yes. Good. When you sit across from him, you look him in the eye and you think about every woman he's hurt. Every lie he's told. And you get that confession for all of us. I will. I whispered. I promise. An hour later, I video called Jessica Moore. She appeared on my screen. Dark hair. Sharp eyes. A small apartment in Phoenix behind her. She looked younger than 36. But her eyes looked older. Lillian. Hi. Thank you for talking to me. Of course. She tucked her hair behind her ear. I've been waiting for this call for 6 years. Deanna told me what happened. Jessica nodded. 2018. Phoenix. I was a marketing director for a tech startup. I met Graham at a networking event. He was charming. Successful. Everything I thought I wanted. We dated for 7 months. He talked about marriage, kids, buying a house together. Then he convinced me to invest in his new venture. $82,000 gone. And so was he. I'm so sorry. I blamed myself for years. Jessica said. Her voice tight. Therapy. Medication. I couldn't trust anyone. I couldn't date. I thought I was stupid. Naive. Broken. You're not. I know that now. But it took a long time. She leaned closer to the camera. Lillian. When you're sitting at that dinner Saturday night and you're scared and you want to run, remember that you're not doing this just for you. You're doing it for every woman he would have targeted next. I will and I'll testify. Jessica said at the trial. Whatever you need. I'm done hiding. Claire Sullivan called me back that afternoon. She was the quietest of the three. Her voice soft and hesitant. I didn't think anyone would ever believe me. She said. I believe you. He said he loved me. He said we'd start a business together. A boutique consulting firm. I gave him $58,000. My entire savings. And then he was just gone. He used the same script on all of us. I said. I thought I was the only one. Claire's voice broke. For 4 years. I thought I was the only one. You're not alone anymore. I said. And neither am I. That evening. Deanna created a group text thread and added all 4 of us. The Survivors Circle. For the next 2 hours. We shared our stories. Not just the money, though the numbers were staggering when you added them up. But the details. The way Graham had introduced himself. The restaurants he'd taken us to. The words he'd used. I've never met anyone like you. You're different from anyone I've ever known. I can see us building a life together. He'd said the same things to all of us. Word for word. Like he was reading from a script. Rachel sent a photo of the engagement ring he'd given her. Jessica sent a screenshot of a text he'd sent. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. Claire sent a photo of a handwritten note. You're my future. I stared at my phone. My hands shaking. He hadn't just lied. He'd performed over and over. City after city. Woman after woman. I typed into the group chat. Tomorrow night. I'm wearing a wire. I'm getting him on tape for all of us. Rachel. We're with you. Jessica. You've got this. Claire. Thank you. Friday morning. I drove to the FBI office for the final briefing. Torres sat across from me at the conference table. The recording pendant in its box between us. Tomorrow night. 7:30. Uchi. Austin. He slid a map across the table marked with red XS. We'll have 2 undercover agents at the bar. 2 more at a table near yours. Ms. Cole will be outside in a surveillance van with me. You'll have an open line the entire time. What if he doesn't talk? I asked. Torres leaned back. He will. Men like your husband have egos. When they think they've won. When they think the person they've manipulated still loves them. They can't resist explaining how they did it. It's not enough for them to win. They need you to know they outsmarted you. He picked up the pendant. Handed it to me. This goes live the moment you put it on. We'll hear everything. The second he confesses. We move in. You'll be safe. I took the pendant. Closed my fingers around it. Okay. Get some rest tonight. Torres said. Tomorrow's a big day. That night. I sat on the couch next to Graham. Watching him flip through basketball highlights on his phone. Completely relaxed. Tomorrow night. He said. Not looking up. Just us. I'm really looking forward to it. Me. Too. I said. He put his phone down. Pulled me close. Kissed the top of my head. I love you. Lyle. I closed my eyes. I love you. Too. The lie came easier every time. Later. After he'd gone to bed. I stood at the window and looked out at the dark street. Tomorrow night at Uchi. I would sit across from the man I'd loved for 8 years and record his confession. Tomorrow. I would become the bait that caught the predator. Tomorrow. Graham Hayes would tell me the truth. And I would destroy him with it. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning to find Graham still asleep beside me. One arm draped across the pillow, his face peaceful. For a moment, I just watched him. The man I'd married. The man I'd trusted. The man who in 13 hours would confess to crimes that would send him to prison for the rest of his life. And he had no idea. I slipped out of bed and stood at the window. The sky was just beginning to lighten pale grey, bleeding into soft pink. Somewhere out there, FBI agents were already preparing. Deanna was probably awake, too. Running through the plan one more time. In 13 hours, I would sit across from Graham at Uchi and record his confession. In 13 hours, this nightmare would finally end. By 8:00, Graham was up and moving through the house like it was any other Saturday. He made coffee, humming along to the radio, and kissed my forehead when he handed me a mug. "Tonight's going to be great," he said, grinning. "I'm really looking forward to it." "Me, too," I said, forcing my voice to stay light. He checked his phone. "I have a meeting with my lawyer this afternoon. Just a quick check-in about the FBI thing. Should be done by 5. I'll meet you at the restaurant at 7. "Sounds perfect." He kissed me again, grabbed his keys, and left. The door closed behind him, and I stood there in the empty kitchen, my hands shaking so badly, I had to set down my coffee. At 10, I drove to the FBI office. Torres was waiting for me in the conference room along with Agent Lisa and Deanna. "How are you holding up?" Torres asked. "Scared," I admitted. "But I'm ready." Lisa opened the black box and lifted out the recording pendant. "Let's test it one more time." She fastened it around my neck, and I felt the cool weight of it settle against my collarbone. She handed me a small flesh-cold earpiece. "This is your backup," she said. "If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe, if he gets aggressive, we'll be able to communicate with you. Just touch the pendant twice and we'll move in immediately." I nodded, my throat tight. Deanna stood and pulled me into a hug. "You're the bravest person I know," she whispered. "And you're not alone in this." "I know," I whispered back. But I felt very, very alone. At noon, I drove to Zilka Park and sat by the water. Families were scattered across the grass. Kids playing couples. Walking dogs. Joggers passing by. Normal Saturday things. The kind of things I used to do without thinking. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. I typed a letter I would never send. "Dear Lillian, 8 years ago, you met a man who seemed perfect. You believed him when he said he loved you. You believed him when he said he wanted a family. You believed every word. You weren't stupid. You weren't naive. You were human. Today, you take your life back. Today you stop being his victim. You are stronger than you ever knew." I saved it, locked my phone, and stared out at the water until I could breathe again. At 3, my phone buzzed. A text from Graham. "Lawyer meeting went well. See you tonight. Love you." I stared at the red heart emoji. He was so confident. So sure of himself. So certain that tonight would be just another romantic dinner. Another performance. Another lie I'd swallow without question. He had no idea. At 4, I went to a salon on South Congress. The stylist was cheerful. Chatty. The kind of person who filled silence with easy conversation. "Special occasion?" she asked, running a comb through my hair. "Anniversary dinner," I said. "How sweet. How many years?" 8. "Congratulations." She smiled at me in the mirror. "You must be so excited." "I am," I said. And I was. Just not for the reason she thought. By 5:30, I was back home standing in front of my closet. I pulled out the navy dress. The one Graham had bought me 2 years ago. The one he always said made me look beautiful. I put it on, zipped it up, and looked at myself in the mirror. The recording pendant hung just below the neckline, hidden by a delicate gold chain I layered over it. Unless you knew to look for it, you'd never notice. I touched it once lightly. You can do this. At 6. My phone buzzed. A text from Deanna. We're all in position. FBI agents at table 12 in the bar. I'm outside in the van with Torres. You're not alone. I typed back. Thank you for everything. Go get him, she replied. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I grabbed my purse, checked my reflection one last time and walked out the door. At 6:45. I sat in my car in the driveway, my hands on the steering wheel. My heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. In less than an hour, I would sit across from Graham Hayes and ask him to tell me the truth. In less than an hour, FBI agents would walk into that restaurant and arrest him. In less than an hour, the life I'd known for 8 years would be over. I started the car and pulled out onto the street. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head. But as I drove toward downtown, toward Uchi, toward the man who'd spent 8 years destroying me from the inside out, I realized something. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. And this time, the whole world would be listening. Saturday, September 28th, 2024. 6:45 p.m. Location: driving toward downtown Austin. The steering wheel felt cold under my palms. Even though the September evening was still warm, I drove south on Lamar Boulevard, the city lights beginning to flicker on as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and deep violet. Norah Jones's "Come Away With Me" drifted softly from the car speakers, a love song that once made me smile. But tonight it felt like a cruel joke. Come away with me. I had come away with Graham 8 years ago. I had trusted him, built a life with him, dreamed of children with him. And now I was driving toward him with a recording device hidden beneath my navy dress. Every word I would say tonight carefully scripted by the FBI. I exhaled slowly, counting to 4, holding for 4, releasing for 4. The breathing technique Dr. Lawson had drilled into me during Tuesday's emergency session. Your body will want to fight or flee, she'd said. But you need to stay present. You need to be calm, observant, and in control. Control. That word had lost all meaning over the past 2 weeks. At the red light on Barton Springs Road, I glanced at my reflection in the rear view mirror. The woman staring back at me looked composed, hair freshly blown out at the salon, makeup, carefully applied navy dress, elegant but not overdone. But her eyes betrayed her. They were the eyes of someone about to walk into a trap of her own making. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Torres: 7:02 p.m. safe arrival. All units in position. Recording device active. Stay calm. You've got this. I typed back with trembling fingers. On my way. 7:05 p.m. Parking lot, South Lamar. I found a spot 2 blocks from Uchi, parallel parking with the kind of mechanical precision that comes from muscle memory rather than conscious thought. For a moment, I just sat there. Engine off. Hands still gripping the wheel, staring at the dashboard clock as the minutes ticked forward. 7:06 p.m. In 24 minutes, I would be sitting across from my husband. In 24 minutes, the recording would begin. In 24 minutes, I would ask the questions that the FBI had rehearsed with me a dozen times. Where did the $67,500 go? Did you forge my signature on the power of attorney? What happened to the money from the other investors? I reached up and touched the small pendant resting just below my collarbone. A delicate silver locket that looked like a sentimental piece of jewelry, but was actually a state-of-the-art recording device. Agent Lisa had fitted it himself yesterday morning, explaining how the tiny microphone could pick up conversations within a 15t radius. Just act natural, Torres had said. Let him talk. The more comfortable he feels, the more he'll reveal. I closed my eyes and whispered into the silence of the car, into the microphone hidden in silver. I can do this. I can do this for Diana, for Rachel, for Jessica, for Claire, for every woman he's ever hurt. My phone rang, shattering the quiet. Diana's name lit up the screen. I answered on the second ring. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, yourself. Diana replied, her tone warm, but laced with concern. You okay? No, I admitted, but I'm here. That's all that matters. There was a pause and I could hear the faint hum of traffic on her end. She was parked somewhere nearby, part of the FBI's surveillance perimeter. Lillian, listen to me. You are not alone in this. Torres is watching. I'm watching. You've got an entire team behind you. And when this is over, we're going to take him down together. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. I couldn't afford to cry now. Not when my makeup had to stay perfect. Not when I had to walk into that restaurant looking like a woman celebrating an anniversary dinner with her husband. Thank you, I whispered. For everything. Don't thank me yet, Diana said with a faint laugh. Save that for when he's behind bars. Deal. Now get in there and show him what a real architect looks like when she's building a case. I smiled despite myself. I'll call you after. You better. The line went dead, and I sat for one more moment. Breathing. Centering. Preparing. Then I opened the car door and stepped out into the warm Texas night. 7:20 p.m. Outside Uchi. South Lamar. Uchi sat on South Lamar like a sleek glass jewel box, its modern architecture glowing softly against the darkening sky. I'd been here once before 2 years ago for our 6th anniversary. Graham had surprised me with reservations, and I'd thought it was the most romantic thing he'd ever done. Now I knew better. Now I knew that every romantic gesture, every thoughtful surprise, every whispered I love you, had been part of a long con. I walked slowly toward the entrance, my heels clicking softly on the pavement. Somewhere in the crowd milling along South Lamar. Couples heading to dinner. Friends laughing over drinks at outdoor patios. There were FBI agents watching me. I didn't know who they were. I wasn't supposed to know. But the knowledge that they were there, invisible and vigilant, gave me a fragile sense of security. The hostess at the door greeted me with a warm smile. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? Yes. Hayes. 7:30. Of course. Mrs. Pays. Your husband is already here right this way. I followed her through the restaurant's minimalist interior. Clean lines. Warm wood. Soft lighting. Toward a corner table where Graham sat waiting, looking effortlessly handsome in a charcoal blazer and open collar shirt. He stood when he saw me, his face lighting up with that smile I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. Wow, he said, his eyes sweeping over me. You look absolutely stunning. He leaned in to kiss my cheek, and I forced myself not to flinch. His cologne was familiar, expensive, suffocating. Thank you, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. You clean up pretty well yourself. He laughed, that easy, confident laugh that had once made me feel safe. We settled into our seats, and a server appeared almost instantly with menus and water glasses. Graham ordered C for both of us. The good stuff, he said with a wink. My hands were trembling under the table, so I clasped them together tightly in my lap. So, Graham said, leaning back in his chair, completely at ease. The lawyer called this afternoon. He thinks the whole FBI thing is going to blow over in about a week. Some bureaucratic mix-up with a client's account. Nothing to worry about. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. That's good news. Yeah. He reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. I know it's been stressful. But we're going to be fine. Lil. We always are. I looked into his eyes. Those warm lying eyes. And felt the weight of the recording pendant against my chest. Recording live. All units ready. Begin when you're ready. The server returned with our sake. Poured 2 small cups. And disappeared again. Graham raised his cup. To us. I lifted mine. The ceramic cool and smooth in my shaking hand. To us. I echoed. We drank and then my phone. Silent on the table between us. Lit up with a single text from Torres. Recording live. All units ready. Begin when you're ready. Graham didn't notice. He was already studying the Omika's menu. Talking about which courses he wanted to try. I took a slow breath. Steadied my hands. And prepared to ask the first question. The trap was set. In just a moment. I'll tell you exactly what Graham said when I asked him about the money. The lies. And the 8 years he stole from me. But first. Comment the number 14. If you're ready to hear his confession. This is the moment everything unravels. Please note. The scene ahead contains fictionalized dialogue based on the events. You can step away now if needed. The first course arrived at our corner table at Uchi just after 7:30 on that Saturday evening, toro with yuzu and sea salt glistening under the soft amber light. Graham picked up his chopsticks with the ease of someone who had no idea his life was about to end. This is incredible, he said, savoring the bite. You know, I was thinking maybe we should do this more often. Just the 2 of us. No work. No stress. Just us. Us. The word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. But I smiled and nodded. I'd like that. He launched into a story about his golf game that morning. A near hole-in-one on the 7th. A bet he'd won against a client. And I laughed in all the right places. Tilted my head. Played the role of the adoring wife. Beneath the table. My hands were clenched so tightly that my nails bit into my palms. The recording pendant hung cool and solid against my collarbone. A silent witness. Graham refilled our sake cups. His movements relaxed. Confident. He had no idea that across the restaurant, tucked into booths and tables that looked like ordinary diners, FBI agents were watching. Listening. Waiting. By 10 minutes to 8. I'd let him talk through 2 more courses, hamachi with jalapeno uni on crispy rice, while I nodded and smiled and felt my heart hammering against the hidden microphone. Then I set down my chopsticks and folded my hands on the table, letting a small worry crease my forehead. Graham. Honey. I've been meaning to ask you something. He looked up. Still smiling. Sure. Babe. What's up? I've been a little worried about our finances lately. His smile faltered just for a fraction of a second. Worried why? I checked the trust fund account last week. I kept my voice soft. Hesitant. As if I were embarrassed to bring it up. There were some withdrawals I didn't remember making. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Oh. Those were investments I made on our behalf. You signed the power of attorney. Remember? I've been managing things for us. I let confusion flicker across my face. But I don't remember signing a general power of attorney. I thought it was limited just for the mortgage refinance in 2018. Graham's jaw tightened. But he forced a laugh. No. Sweetheart. You're misremembering. It was a general POA. You signed it at the same time. I've got the paperwork at the office. I tilted my head. Playing the uncertain wife. Are you sure? Because $67. 500 is a lot of money. Graham. His hand tightened around mine just a little too hard. It's our money. Lillian. I'm investing it for our future. The next course arrived sir with ginger. But neither of us touched it. The clock on the far wall read 8:00, and I could feel the weight of the recording pendant. The eyes of the agents. The culmination of 2 weeks of fear and preparation pressing down on me. I took a slow breath. Graham. I need you to be honest with me. He set down his sake cup. I am being honest. The woman in the photos. Natasha. Who is she? His face went still. For a moment. The mask slipped and I saw something cold flicker behind his eyes. Then he smiled again. But it didn't reach his gaze. She's a colleague. I told you that. Just a colleague. What are you trying to say? Lillian. I know about the photos. The hotel. The trips. His smile vanished. Who told you that? Does it matter? He drained his sake in one swallow and poured another. By 8:15. The alcohol in the pressure were loosening his tongue. Fine. Yes. We had an affair. But it didn't mean anything. Tears. Real ones. Burned my eyes. You cheated on me. Don't act so wounded. He snapped. You want the truth. Natasha is smarter than you. She understands business. She understands what it takes to survive in this world. And you. He laughed bitterly. You're just an architect who draws pretty buildings and dreams about babies. I flinched. And the hurt on my face was no longer an act. What am I to you? Graham. I whispered. He leaned back in his chair. Eyes hard. You were easy. Lillian. You were lonely. You wanted to believe someone loved you and you had money. So. You used me. I used your trust fund. Yes. Hayes Capital needed cash flow. Old investors wanted their returns. I had to pay them somehow. With my money. With your money. With your grandmother's trust. And I was going to take the rest of it. Too. He smiled. Cruel and triumphant. Natasha already had the paperwork ready. Another $783. 000 gone. My voice was barely audible. When did you plan this? He laughed a sharp bitter sound. From day one. Lillian. You think I loved you. You were a mark. A number in a ledger. That's all you ever were. The words hung in the air like poison. And then movement fast. Professional. Unstoppable. It was 8:45 when Special Agent Vincent Torres appeared at our table. Flanked by 2 agents in dark suits. Across the restaurant. I saw other diners stand and pull badges from their jackets. The careful choreography of an FBI takedown. Graham Michael Hayes. Torres said, his voice calm and authoritative. You are under arrest for wire fraud securities. Fraud conspiracy to commit fraud. Forgery. And identity theft. Graham's face went white. What? Torres nodded to an agent who stepped forward with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Lillian. Graham's voice cracked. What the hell is this? I stood slowly. My legs trembling. And reached up to touch the silver pendant at my throat. It's all been recorded. Graham. I said quietly. Every word. His face twisted with rage. You, __, you set me up. Torres stepped between us. Mr. Hayes, do not speak to the witness. Witness. Graham's voice rose to a shout. She's my wife. Not for long. I whispered. The agents pulled him to his feet. Cuffed his hands behind his back. Other diners stared, some filming on their phones. Some whispering in shock. The elegant ambience of Uchi had been shattered by the cold reality of justice. As they led him toward the door, Graham looked back at me one last time. The charming smile was gone. The warmth in his eyes. The tenderness. The man I thought I'd loved for 8 years. It had all been a lie. All I saw now was a stranger. By 8:50, I was standing on the sidewalk outside the restaurant where Deanna was waiting. Her face was tight with emotion. The moment she saw me, she pulled me into her arms. I collapsed against her sobbing. Deep wrenching sobs that I'd been holding back for 2 weeks. For 8 years. For a lifetime. I did it. I choked out. I did it. You did. Deanna whispered fiercely, holding me tight. It's over. Lillian. It's finally over. But as the FBI van pulled away into the warm September night, red and blue lights flashing against the Austin skyline, I realized something. The mask had fallen. And all I'd ever loved was the mask. The federal courthouse in downtown Austin looked like a fortress of limestone and glass when I walked through its doors on a gray October morning. Assistant U.S. Attorney Daniel Ross met me in a conference room on the 3rd floor, spreading evidence across the long table like a general preparing for battle. The Uchki recording bank statements showing the $67,500 stolen from my trust. The forged power of attorney with my signature traced from a 2018 capital raising document. Emails between Graham and Natasha planning to drain another $783,000 from my account. This is one of the strongest evidence packages I've ever seen, Ross said. His voice calm and professional. He was in his early 40s. Silver threading through his dark hair with the kind of steady confidence that came from winning cases. Your recording alone is prosecutorial gold. But combined with the financial records, Natasha's cooperation and testimony from the other victims were going to bury him. I nodded. My hands folded tightly in my lap. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant. The other part just felt hollowed out. By mid-October, Graham's defense attorney, a sharp-suited lawyer named Marcus Webb, filed a motion to suppress the Uchki recording, arguing that I'd violated Graham's privacy. Judge Maria Delgado, a nonsense jurist with 30 years on the bench, shot the motion down in less than 10 minutes. Mrs. Hayes was the victim of an ongoing fraud. She ruled under Texas law. She had every right to record the conversation. Motion denied. The day Natasha Mercer accepted her plea deal, I watched through the courtroom window as she stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed, and pleaded guilty to conspiracy and securities fraud. 8 years in federal prison in exchange for her testimony against Graham. When she walked out flanked by marshals, our eyes met for just a second. I saw no apology there. Only resignation. The trial began on November 18th. The courtroom was packed, journalists in the press gallery. Families of Ponzi victims filling the benches. FBI agents sitting quietly in the back. Graham sat at the defense table in a tailored navy suit. His expression blank as if this were happening to someone else. When I took the stand, the room went silent. Ross guided me through my testimony with careful, methodical questions. I told the jury about the vasectomy Graham had hidden from me. The 8 years of lies. About wanting children. The $67,500 stolen from my grandmother's trust. The forged power of attorney. The affair with Natasha. My voice stayed steady even when I described the moment at Uchki when Graham called me a marker number in a ledger. Marcus Webb's cross-examination was brutal. He tried to paint me as a scorned wife seeking revenge. A woman who'd manipulated Graham into a confession with tears and accusations. But when Ross played the Uchki recording for the jury, Graham's voice, cold and contemptuous, admitting, "You were easy. You had money. You were a mark." The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. 2 jurors wiped their eyes. 2 days later, Natasha took the stand. She detailed the Ponzi scheme with clinical precision. 43 investors. $4.7 million raised through fake quarterly reports and fabricated property developments. Old investors paid with new investors' money. She admitted forging documents, creating shell companies, and planning to steal the remaining $783,000 from my trust fund. We were going to take it all, she said flatly. Graham told me she'd never notice until it was too late. Webb tried to discredit her, but the financial records and emails corroborated every word. On November 22 ND, the victim impact statements began. Rachel Torres, the Houston doctor who'd lost $115,000, spoke first. He didn't just steal my savings, she said, her voice breaking. He stole my ability to trust, to love, to believe that someone could want me for who I am and not what I have. Jessica Moore from Phoenix, who'd lost $82,000, described the suicide attempt that followed her discovery of Graham's betrayal. A retired schoolteacher who'd invested $200,000 in Hayes Capital. His entire pension wept as he told the jury he'd never be able to retire. When my turn came, I stood at the podium and looked directly at Graham. He didn't just steal money, I said. He stole 8 years of my life. He stole my dreams of having children. He stole my sense of safety in the world. But he didn't steal my voice. And today, I'm using it. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned on November 25 the foreman read the verdict on all 22 counts. Wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy, forgery, identity theft. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Graham's face remained expressionless, but I saw his hands tighten on the edge of the table. Sentencing came on December 6. Judge Delgado looked down at Graham with an expression of cold fury. Mr. Hayes, you are a predator who targeted vulnerable women and destroyed families. This court finds your conduct reprehensible. 35 years in federal prison. No release eligibility for 30 years. Restitution of $5.1 million to the victims. Graham showed no emotion. He was led out in handcuffs without looking back. On the courthouse steps, the 5 of us stood together. Me, Deanna, Rachel, Jessica, Claire, while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. I stepped forward to the microphone. Graham Hayes stole money, I said. But what he really stole was our sense of safety, our ability to trust. Today, we take that back. We are not victims. We are survivors. The video went viral within an hour. That evening, back at my house in Zilker, I found a letter in my mailbox. Travis County Jail. Graham's handwriting on the envelope. Inside a single page. A request for a final visit before his transfer to federal prison. I stared at the visitor request form for a long time. Then I checked the box marked agree. The divorce was finalized on December 15 in a windowless courtroom that smelled of old wood and stale coffee. Texas law required a 60-day waiting period from the date I'd filed the petition back in late September. And Judge Alvarez granted the dissolution without hesitation. Fault-based divorce. She ruled Graham's fraud and theft were more than sufficient grounds. I kept the house, the recovered trust fund, and a portion of the restitution that would trickle in over the coming years. As the FBI liquidated, Graham seized assets. No alimony. I didn't want a single dollar more from him than what he'd stolen. By then, the FBI had already seized his offshore accounts. $1.80 million. Hidden in the Cayman Islands. Along with his cars, his downtown condo, and every asset tied to Hayes Capital. My $67,500 came back in full within weeks of the sentencing. The other romance fraud victims. Deanna, Jessica, Rachel, Claire, recovered most of their losses as well. The Ponzi victims. 43 investors who'd believed Graham's promises of steady returns filed a class action lawsuit against his estate. Their attorneys estimated they'd see 40 to 50 cents on the dollar. Maybe more. If the asset sales went well. It wasn't justice. But it was something. I put the Zilker house on the market the week before Christmas. Walking through those rooms one last time. The kitchen where Graham had cooked dinner and lied to my face. The bedroom where I'd slept beside a stranger for 8 years. The backyard where I'd once imagined children playing. I felt nothing but a cold, clean clarity. This place held no good memories anymore. Only ghosts. The house sold in 3 days. A young couple with a baby made an offer above asking price. And I signed the papers without a second thought. I moved into a modern loft in East Austin in early January. All exposed brick and industrial beams and floor-to-ceiling windows that let the winter light pour in. It was 10 minutes from Deanna's apartment. 15 from my architecture firm downtown. She helped me unpack boxes on a Saturday afternoon. And we drank cheap wine on the bare floor while I told her I was ready to build something new. You already are, she said, raising her glass. Returning to work felt like coming up for air. My architecture firm welcomed me back without questions. And I threw myself into a pro bono project. Designing a transitional housing facility for women. Leaving abusive relationships. The building featured secure entries, communal gardens, and private family units designed to feel like homes, not shelters. When the design won a local AIA award in late December, I stood at the podium and dedicated it to every woman who'd ever had to rebuild her life from nothing. The applause felt like vindication. On a cold Saturday in mid-December, I hosted dinner at my new loft for the 4 of them. Deanna, Jessica, Rachel, and Claire. We sat around my half-furnished living room with takeout Thai food spread across cardboard boxes serving as a table. And we told our stories. Not the sanitized courtroom versions, but the raw, messy truth. Jessica talked about the year she'd spent in therapy after her suicide attempt. Rachel admitted she still flinched when men complimented her. Claire cried when she described how her own mother had blamed her for letting herself be fooled. Deanna raised her glass of cheap Trader Joe's wine. We survived him. That makes us stronger than he ever was. That night, we decided to formalize what had started as a group text thread months earlier. We called it the Survivors Trust, a non-profit dedicated to helping women recover from romance fraud and financial abuse. Lillian, Deanna and Jessica became the co-founders with Rachel and Claire serving on the advisory board. Our mission was simple. Provide free forensic accounting, legal referrals, and emotional support to women whose partners had stolen from them. We partnered with the National Network to End Domestic Violence, secured a small grant from a local foundation, and launched a website in early January. Within 3 months, we'd helped 17 women across Texas recover more than $400,000 in stolen funds. We walked them through the process of filing police reports, freezing bank accounts, gathering evidence, and finding lawyers who understood financial abuse. NPR ran a feature story about us. CNN interviewed the 5 of us in our tiny East Austin office, cameras rolling while we explained how romance fraud was an invisible epidemic. Local news stations picked up the story. Donations poured in. But even as I built this new life, new home, new work, new purpose, I couldn't escape the weight of what I'd lost. Not just the money. Not even just the 8 years. It was the future. I'd imagined the children I'd never have, the family photos that would never exist. The version of myself who'd believed love was real and lasting and safe. I kept seeing Dr. Lawson twice a month. In one session in late December, I broke down completely, sobbing that I wasn't just grieving Graham. I was grieving the life I'd thought I was building. You're not mourning him. Dr. Lawson said gently, passing me a box of tissues. You're mourning the version of yourself who believed his lies. And that's okay. That version of you deserved better. This version of you is making sure no one else has to go through what you did. Her words stayed with me. On New Year's Eve, I stayed in my loft alone. Outside, I could hear fireworks popping over downtown Austin, people shouting and laughing in the streets below. My phone buzzed with a text from Deanna. You survived the hardest year of your life. Next year will be better. I typed back. I know. And I meant it. But there was one last thing I needed to do. On January 15th, I drove east out of Austin on Highway 95 past the flat stretches of farmland and scrubby mosquite trees until I reached the low grey buildings of FCI Bastrop, the Federal Correctional Institution, where Graham was serving his 35-year sentence. I'd filled out the visitor request form weeks ago, the one he'd sent me the night of his sentencing, and the approval letter sat in my glove compartment like a ticking bomb. I wasn't going to forgive him. I wasn't going to beg for answers or try to understand why he'd done what he'd done. I didn't need closure because closure implied there was still an open wound that needed sealing. I was going to show him that he hadn't destroyed me. I was going to look him in the eye. Let him see the woman I'd become without him. The woman who'd built a non-profit, won an architecture award, helped 17 other survivors reclaim their lives. And then I was going to walk out of that prison and never think of him again. I parked in the visitor lot, checked my ID at the security gate, and walked through the metal detectors into the cold fluorescent visiting room where families sat separated by plexiglass and telephones. And there he was, waiting on the other side of the glass, wearing an orange jumpsuit and a face I no longer recognized. I drove east out of Austin on Highway 95. Alone on a cold January morning, the sky a pale washed-out blue stretching endlessly over flat Texas farmland. Deanna had offered to come with me, texting me 3 times the night before. You don't have to do this alone. But I declined. This was something I needed to do by myself. Not for closure. Not for forgiveness. But to show him that he hadn't broken me. The drive took 40 minutes. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the Federal Correctional Institution at Bastrop, my hands were steady on the wheel. The prison loomed ahead, low concrete buildings ringed by chain-link fences topped with coils of razor wire guard towers at each corner. Everything painted in shades of institutional grey. It looked exactly like what it was, a place where time stopped and hope went to die. I checked in at the main gate presenting my driver's license and the visitor approval letter. A corrections officer scanned my ID, checked my name against a list, and waved me through a metal detector. Another officer searched my purse. No phones. No cash. No contraband. I'd brought nothing but my keys and my resolve. The visiting room was a long, narrow space with white concrete walls, metal tables bolted to the floor, and harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly and overexposed. A plexiglass partition divided the room down the middle. Telephones mounted on either side. Families clustered at tables. Wives talking to husbands. Children pressing hands against the glass. Everyone keeping their voices low and their emotions tightly controlled. I sat at table 7 and waited. And then a door opened on the far side of the partition. And Graham walked in. He looked older. Thinner. The tailored suits and confident smile were gone. In their place, a tan jumpsuit, prison shoe sneakers, and a face that seemed somehow emptied out, as if someone had scooped away everything that had made him charming, and left only the hollow scaffolding beneath. His eyes met mine across the plexiglass, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he picked up the phone on his side. I picked up mine. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. "Why are you here?" he said finally, his voice flat and emotionless through the tiny speaker. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No residual affection. Just a cold, clear recognition of a stranger. Because I needed to see you for who you really are. I said. Not the man I thought I married. The man you always were. He shrugged a small, dismissive gesture. What do you want? Lillian. An apology. You're not going to get one. I didn't come here for an apology. Then why? He leaned back in his plastic chair, crossing his arms. To gloat. To rub it in that you won. I came to show you that you failed. His jaw tightened. Failed. You spent 8 years trying to break me down. Trying to turn me into something small and controllable. Something you could use and discard when you were done. And you failed. He laughed a short bitter sound. I didn't fail. Lillian. I got exactly what I wanted. Your money. Your trust. 8 years of your life. I'd say that's a pretty good return on investment. I leaned forward, holding the phone tighter. You got my money for a while. But I got it back. You got 8 years of my life. But I'm building a new one. You wanted to break me. But I'm still here. So what? He sneered. You think you're some kind of hero now. You think starting a little non-profit and helping a few women makes you special. No. I said quietly. It makes me free. His expression darkened. You were naive. Lillian. Weak. You believed what you wanted to believe because you were desperate to be loved. That's not my fault. That's yours. Maybe I was naive. I said. But I'd rather be someone who trusts too much than someone who feels nothing at all. Feelings are a weakness. He shot back. They make you controllable. Predictable. That's how I knew you'd be easy. And that's how I know you'll spend the rest of your life in a cage. I kept my voice steady. Calm. You think you're smarter than everyone else. But you're just empty. You don't feel love or guilt or empathy. You don't even feel satisfaction. You're a hollow shell pretending to be human. For the first time. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger maybe, or something darker. You think you're better than me. He hissed. You're not. You're just the one who didn't get caught. No. Graham. I'm the one who survived you. He slammed his palm against the plexiglass, making several nearby visitors jump. You'll never forget me. Lillian. I'll be in your head for the rest of your life. I stood up slowly, still holding the phone, looking down at him through the scratched yellowed plexiglass. You're right. I said. I won't forget you. But not because you matter. I'll remember you as a reminder of everything I'll never tolerate again. I'll remember you every time I help another woman leave a man like you. Every time I teach someone to recognize the warning signs. Every time I look at my non-profit's financials and see how many lives we've saved. His face twisted. You're nothing without me. I was always something, Graham. You just couldn't see it because you don't understand what it means to be real. I set the phone down gently on the cradle. He shouted something. I couldn't hear what. But I saw his mouth moving. His fist pounding the plexiglass. His face red with rage. I turned and walked toward the exit. Lillian. His voice was muffled, but audible, echoing through the visiting room. You loved me. You know you did. I stopped at the door and looked back one last time. He was standing now, both hands pressed against the plexiglass, staring at me with something that might have been desperation. I picked up the phone one more time. No. I said quietly. I loved the person you pretended to be. I never knew who you really were. Then I hung up, walked out, and didn't look back. Outside, the January sun was cold and brilliant. The kind of light that makes everything sharp and clear. I sat in my car for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, and let out a long, slow breath. My phone buzzed. Deanna, how do you feel? I typed back, smiling. Free. I started the engine and drove away from the prison, watching it shrink in my rear-view mirror until it disappeared completely behind the flat Texas horizon. Graham Hayes was just one chapter in my story, but I was the one writing the ending. The loft smelled like roasted turkey and sage stuffing when the first knock came at 6 o'clock on Thanksgiving evening. I opened the door to find Deanna standing there with 2 bottles of wine and a grin on her face. "You actually cooked," she said, stepping inside and eyeing the table I'd set with mismatched plates and flickering candles. "Don't sound so surprised," I said, laughing. By 6:30, the loft was full. Jessica flew in from Los Angeles that morning, bringing stories about her new marketing job and a pumpkin pie from the best bakery in California. My younger brother, Marcus, arrived with his fiancée Emma, both glowing with engagement happiness. Attorney Sarah Bennett, the victim advocate who'd walked me through the trial, showed up with homemade mac and cheese. Ben Carter, the civil rights lawyer I'd met at a non-profit fundraiser back in June, arrived last with flowers and a shy smile that still made my heart skip in a way I was slowly learning to trust again. And then there was Aaron Sullivan, Deanna's ex-fiancé, the man she'd lost 8 years ago when Graham destroyed her life. They'd reconnected 6 months earlier, tentatively at first, and tonight he stood beside her in my kitchen, his hand resting lightly on her back. When she looked up at him, I saw something I hadn't seen in Indiana in years: peace. We gathered around the table as the sun set over East Austin, city lights twinkling through the windows. The turkey was golden and imperfect, the stuffing slightly oversweet, the mashed potatoes lumpy. It didn't matter. What mattered was the laughter, the clinking glasses, the warmth of people who'd chosen to show up. Halfway through dinner, I stood and raised my glass. The table fell quiet. "A year ago, I didn't know if I'd survived this," I said. "I thought my life was over. I thought everything I'd built was gone forever." I looked around the table, meeting the eyes of everyone who'd helped me rebuild. But I did survive. My life didn't end. It just began again. Graham took a lot from me. 8 years. $67. 500. My dream of children. But he couldn't take this. I gestured to the faces around me. He couldn't take the people in this room, the work we've built, the woman I've become. So, thank you for fighting for me, for believing in me, and for showing me that family isn't about blood or marriage vows. It's about the people who show up when everything falls apart. Deanna wiped her eyes. Jessica squeezed my hand. Ben smiled with quiet pride. "To survivors," Deanna said, raising her glass. "To second chances," Aaron added. "To family," Marcus said. We drank and the conversation surged back louder, now warmer, full of the kind of joy that only comes after surviving something that should have broken you. After dinner, Deanna and I carried our wine glasses to the rooftop terrace. I'd strung cafe lights across the railing, and they glowed softly in the cool November night. The Austin skyline stretched out before us, a constellation of lights against the dark Texas sky. "You know that letter you got last month?" Deanna said, leaning against the railing. "From the publisher." I nodded. "They want to publish my memoir. That's huge." "Lil, what's huge is that I get to tell this story on my terms," I said. "Not as a victim. As someone who fought back." "What are you calling it?" "Trust and theft. How I survived financial abuse and found my voice." "Perfect." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe below us. "We helped 47 women this year," Deanna said quietly, "through the Survivors Trust, and recovered 1.2 million. I added, "You're changing lives, Lillian." "We're changing lives," I corrected. "None of this happens without you. Without Jessica, Rachel, Claire. without every woman who had the courage to say, "This happened to me." 2. Deanna turned to look at me. "Do you ever regret it going after him the way you did?" I thought about the fear. The sleepless nights. The moment at Uchi when I'd sat across from Graham with a recording device hidden under my dress. About the trial. The prison visit where I'd looked him in the eye and refused to break. "No," I said. "Not for a second." "Good." Diana clinked her glass against mine. "Because you're kind of a badass." I laughed. "I'm learning downstairs." I could hear Ben's deep laugh carrying up through the open door. In June, when we'd met at that fundraiser, I'd been terrified to even consider dating again. But Ben had been patient, kind, respectful in ways I was only beginning to understand I deserved. We'd gone slow coffee dates, long walks, late-night conversations. He knew my story. He'd never tried to fix me or rush me. He just showed up again and again and let me set the pace. I wasn't in love with him yet, but I could feel the possibility of it like the first warm day after a long winter. Deanna squeezed my shoulder. "I'm going to head back down. Aaron's probably boring Marcus with cryptocurrency stories." I laughed. "Go save my brother." She disappeared down the stairs and I stood alone on the rooftop. The November wind cool against my face. The string light swaying gently overhead. I thought about Graham. Locked in a federal prison 500 miles away. Serving 35 years. I didn't think about him often anymore. Not with anger. Not with sadness. Not even with satisfaction. Mostly, I didn't think about him at all. But tonight, standing under the vast Texas sky, with the warmth of my chosen family glowing below me, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for him. Never for him. But for what his betrayal had taught me. That I was stronger than I'd ever known. That I could survive the unthinkable. That I could rebuild my life and make it better than before. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered into the darkness, "I'm free." And I was. Betrayal can destroy you, or it can rebuild you into someone unbreakable. The choice I'd learned was always mine. Looking back at my story, I see a woman who loved too deeply and trusted too blindly. Family betrayal doesn't always come from blood relatives. Sometimes it comes from the person sleeping beside you. The one who promised forever. Graham's family betrayal cut deeper than any stranger's crime. Because I'd built my entire future around him. What I experienced wasn't just family betrayal. It was systematic family revenge against every dream I'd ever held. He extracted family revenge for vulnerabilities I didn't know I had. Turning 8 years of my life into his personal family revenge scheme against women who dared to trust. My advice: don't be like me. Don't ignore the red flags. The evasiveness about finances. The isolation from friends. The stories that don't quite add up. Don't wait for absolute proof before questioning what feels wrong. Don't sacrifice your independence for the illusion of partnership. The lessons I learned. First, financial transparency isn't unromantic. It's essential. Second, trust must be earned through consistency, not charm. Third, vulnerability is strength, but discernment is survival. Fourth, you can rebuild from ashes and become someone stronger than you ever imagined. My personal belief: God didn't cause my suffering, but He walked with me through it. In my darkest moments, when I questioned whether I'd survive, I found strength. I didn't know I possessed a strength I believe was divinely given. If my story saves even one woman from signing documents she doesn't understand, from ignoring her instincts, from losing herself in someone else's lies, then these 8 years of pain will have meant something. You are not responsible for someone else's betrayal, but you are responsible for what you do after. Choose to survive. Choose to rebuild. Choose freedom. Thank you for walking this entire journey with me. I'd love to hear your perspective. What would you do if you found yourself in a situation like mine? Discovering your partner had stolen from you while planning an elaborate fraud? Please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. If this story resonated with you emotionally, consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss future stories. A gentle reminder. While inspired by financial abuse patterns and legal cases, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better.